Welcome to Jobbed Out, the wrestling editorial that reminds you that your first day really can determine how your whole career can go.
I told you. Oh, God.
Let's go, Wolves. Down 6. Day 1 is...
It's tough being the new guy at work. You don't know anybody, you don't know where anything is, and often you don't even know their expectations of you. Sometimes, though, you can make such a good first impression that an employer is willing to strap a rocket to you from the very start. Wrestling is very much the same way. While many new hires are given a wait-and-see attitude as they adjust to a new environment, others are thrown in and left to either sink or swim. This video is about the wrestlers who a promotion had so much faith in that they immediately trusted the new hire with gold and a spot in the title history. This is Freaks 5 wrestlers who became champion on day 1. Number 5. Gail Kim and the WWE Women's Championship. The women's division in the early 2000s were absolutely stacked, pardon the wordplay, with established talent, both with stars of the Attitude Era and acquisitions from WCW and ECW respectively. What they didn't have much of in 2003 was bright young stars who hadn't already been seen before. So when Gail Kim signed her contract, the expectations were high to say the least. Kim would debut in a 7 Divas over-the-top rope battle royal on Raw, where she got a small amount of offense in and eliminated both Trish Stratus and Victoria to claim her first victory and title in the WWE. While her WWE career since hadn't been the greatest, the TNA Hall of Famer is widely respected for her contributions in making women's wrestling more about the wrestling. Number 4. Ken Shamrock and the NWA World's Heavyweight title. The World's Most Dangerous Man had so much potential in the late 90s. Pushed in the WWF as unstable and quick to snap, the master of the ankle lock was the one who introduced tapping out to wrestling audiences. Well, if you ignore the fact that Taz was doing it first. Still, when Shamrock left the WWE over creative differences in '99, he largely kept himself away from wrestling altogether. Then TNA came around under the banner of the National Wrestling Alliance. TNA's first ever show was main evented with a debuting Gauntlet for the Gold, a match similar to WWE's Royal Rumble, except the final 2 combatants would switch from over-the-top rules to a standard match. In this case, it was for Dan the Beast Severn's NWA World's Heavyweight title because he wasn't invited. Hilariously, the 3 biggest names they had at the time, Jeff Jarrett, Scott Hall, and Ken Shamrock, all announced in the company's very first segment what they thought of this gauntlet.
That's the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard in my life.
You're right about how this NWA title match is played out. It sucks.
About this battle royal for the belt, it sucks.
While the match also featured the likes of Brian Christopher, Steve Corino, Crowbar, Conan, The Future Abyss, and freaking Fantasio, the final 2 would end up being Shamrock and Malice, formerly The Wall in WCW, with Shamrock hitting a belly-to-belly for the win and finally becoming world champion on his very first day. Number 3. Paige and the WWE Divas Championship. Before the angry "actually" comments roll in here, this is a point in time when NXT was not considered canon with the main WWE roster.
Why? Do you have chloroform?
Why don't I have chloroform?
Paige was everything that Laurinaitis' lingerie models were not in the WWE. She was tall and slender, yeah, but rather than be a model that they were going to teach to wrestle, she was a wrestler who they had to teach to model. WrestleMania 30 saw WWE Divas champion AJ Lee successfully defeat, everybody. She took on the entire division in a single match and won, not that anybody remembers, because we were all still reeling from the match before where, yeah. Anyway, on the Raw after Mania, AJ took a page out of her future husband's book by cutting a promo about how long she'd been a dominant champion.
295.
This is day 435!
Before being interrupted by the Anti-Diva, who herself was the first NXT Women's Champion.
I just came to do what no one else would. And that's to congratulate you, AJ. You did great last night.
Paige's praise and fangirling was met, however, with complete disdain and hostility as AJ Lee, as champion, challenged Paige to a match with her own title on the line for reasons. You can see where this is going.
Hey, look at this. Oh! Hooks the leg off the Paige side.
Since WWE and NXT were still considered separate universes at the time, she would be forced by JBL to vacate the NXT title a couple weeks later.
But with the WWE Championship, you're all over the world. You're defending the championship everywhere. The NXT Championship should really stay in NXT.
And no, before somebody comments, I'm not going to talk about that either. Number 2. Santino Marella and the WWE Intercontinental title. What if I told you that the person who benefited most from the Vince McMahon-Donald Trump Battle of the Billionaires story was Santino? After losing the biggest match in WrestleMania history by proxy, Vince McMahon and Umaga went on a tear with specific intentions to get revenge on Bobby Lashley. During the Raw European Tour, Umaga, the Intercontinental Champion, put out an open challenge that was answered by nobody. So Vince McMahon extended their challenge to include somebody from the crowd, and wouldn't you know it, OVW's Anthony Corelli just so happened to be in the neighborhood that day.
And Dusty said, if they ever call you and ask you if you can do anything, the answer is yes. So they called me and they're like, can you speak Italian? I'm like, ding, yes. I have a tourist Italian cassette. I actually said, vorrei un mezzo chilo di formaggio, which means I want to buy a half kilo of cheese. That sounded pretty good. I can kind of hear them. I could hear them looking at each other.
Vince gave Santino a brief introduction while predating a meme by nearly half a decade.
Take a look at this. What the hell is that?
Question for you. What are those?
For a wrestler versus planted fan match, what we got was surprisingly competitive.
So the WWE Universe was not impressed with being force-fed this fan. Everyone's like, yeah, right, as if, man. This guy was in the audience. They tried to say the backstory that although he was in the audience, he was training to be a wrestler. And people were just like, yeah, no thanks.
They weren't buying it.
Until Vince made the match no holds barred, and Armando Estrada caused a distraction.
Oh, hello! And Umaga with a cheap shot.
Umaga would take control until his rival Bobby Lashley could run in for the save.
Lashley with a powerful spear.
Santino's near-lifeless corpse would then be draped over Umaga for the 3 count so he could claim the Intercontinental Championship in what would be known as the Milan Miracle. Now, before I get to number 1, I do have a few honorable mentions and why they didn't make the cut. Pentagon Jr. and the Impact Wrestling World Championship. The man with zero fear, Pentagon Jr. was Lucha Underground's ace, and despite being a clear heel, was an absolute fan favorite. In April of 2018, TNA, then going by Impact Wrestling, live-streamed a crossover show with Lucha Underground during WrestleCon, where the main event was to be Impact Wrestling's world champion Austin Aries teaming up with Lucha Underground's Rey Fenix against Impact Wrestling's Alberto El Patron and Lucha Underground's Pentagon Jr. Del Dipshit no-showed the event and was promptly fired, leaving the other 3 to compete in a non-title triple threat that Penta would win. It was announced during that show that at Impact's upcoming Redemption pay-per-view, the trio would run it back, this time with the belt on the line. Now considered part of the Impact roster instead of the Lucha Underground roster, Penta would again claim victory, but this time also claiming the Impact World title, which he would hold for a whole 2 days. Whether this counts as a Day 1 victory ultimately depends on whether you consider that WrestleCon livestream to be canon or not. Would it be appropriate to say Penta's reign was Day 1-ish? Nah, that just sounds stupid, Oos. Nicholas Cone and the WWE Tag Team Championships. Let's talk about the youngest champion in WWE history. It all started in early 2018 when Sheamus and Cesaro proclaimed that they had defeated every tag team Raw had to offer and were now issuing a challenge for WrestleMania. The Raw Tag Division would then take part in a battle royal later that night that would include an unlikely competitor in Braun Strowman, who would dominate the field sans partner. Despite his solo victory, he was told that he could not challenge for the tag titles until he found a partner. And while the monster among men felt he didn't need one, he relented, selecting 10-year-old Nicholas from the crowd. Fun fact, Nicholas is the real-life son of referee John Cone, who was the designated referee for this match. Nicholas, clearly shitting himself the entire time, even tagged in for a couple seconds before promptly rethinking it and tagging back out, thus forcing Braun Strowman to beat both members of the Bar all on his own. What a heel. The next night on Raw, both Strowman and Cone would vacate their championships.
Nicholas has a scheduling conflict. I mean, he's still in the 4th grade.
But I'm not counting it for the very simple reason that Nicholas Cone was plucked from the audience, which means he was a volunteer without a contract. A day zero champion, if you will. Pretty much every athlete, celebrity, or random developmental plant who ever won the Hardcore 24/7 or DDT Ironman Heavy Metalweight Championship, because really, come on. None of them were ever under contract for it to have been day 1, and most of them don't make it to day 2. With that said, who is my number 1 wrestler who walked in and won a championship on day 1? Number 1. Brock Lesnar and the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. When Brock Lesnar negotiated his release from the WWE in 2004, he signed a no-compete clause barring him from wrestling entirely that would have lasted through 2010. Since Lesnar was looking towards an NFL career with the Minnesota Vikings, he was cool with it. Unfortunately for him, he didn't make the cut. So without a plan B and with money drying up, Lesnar turned to Japan. New Japan, that is. Despite WWE's repeated attempts to enforce his no-compete clause, Lesnar would debut at New Japan's Tokon Sozu New Chapter show in late 2005, joining Masahiro Chono and Kazuyuki Fujita in a triple threat match for New Japan's top prize, the International Wrestling Grand Prix Heavyweight Championship. Lesnar would win in dominant fashion, hitting both competitors with the F5, now renamed The Verdict for obvious reasons. He would remain undefeated both against the competition and the WWE's lawyers until eventually getting into a financial dispute and being stripped of the title, though he would hold the physical belt and take it to Antonio Inoki's IGF promotion, ultimately losing it to Kurt Angle. And there you have it, 5 wrestlers who walked into a promotion plucked seemingly out of nowhere with huge expectations and won a championship on day 1. And I want to know, what other wrestlers come to mind when you think of people who got it done on the first day? And what other unique or weird ideas would you like to see a top list made about? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more, because I want you to be a part of these conversations too. For now though, I better get my shoulders off the mat, so I want to thank you for tuning in to Jobbed Out. I'll catch you next time.